All right, the time is now 6:11 p.m. Somebody sound like they sending an angry email. If you typing hard on the laptop, it's up on me just for a second. So, in meeting in spaces like this, I like to take a little time to see who's in the room. To the person who just came in, welcome to the space. Before I introduce BCYF, I just want to see who's in the room. So I'm about to call out a bunch of stuff that Black folk are usually associated with. And if it's something that you're associated with, I just want you to drop a 1 in the chat. All right, everybody. And I used to be a high school teacher, so I just want to make sure everybody know the directions. All right, so we're just going to do a practice round. If you got shoes on right now, put a 1 in the chat. I see a lot of barefoot people here. I mean, I ain't judging.
There you go.
Somebody put a 0. All right, so I want to see who's in the house. We got anybody in here from the socks count? Goodbye, Anetta. All right, so we're about to get started. We got anybody in the house from Delta Sigma Theta? From Sigma Gamma Rho? From Zeta Phi Beta? What about the lovely ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha? We got any brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha? Kappa Alpha Psi? Iota Phi Theta? Omega Psi Phi? Phi Beta Sigma? We got any Bloods, Crips, Pyru, Vice Lords, Black Gorilla Family, Church of God in Christ, Baptist, Episcopalian, AMEs, Catholic, Presbyterian, Nation of Islam, Morgan State University, Coppin State University, East Baltimore, West Baltimore, South Baltimore, any HBCU, Towson, University of Maryland. We welcome you all into the space, no matter what you're affiliated with. I do that because I want to impress upon the fact that we're all family, no matter what who we are associated with. We are all one. So welcome to the space. My name is Shaquille Carbon. I am a communications consultant with the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund. We are a equity-based philanthropic institution in Baltimore City. We were founded in 2016 by the voters of Baltimore, actually. This institution was developed through referendum. Most people in Baltimore say, you know what, we want an institution that invests in our young people, that invests in organizations that are doing the work in our communities, not just organizations that are working in our communities and getting funding for doing that and then taking that funding and doing whatever it is they want to do. We want to fund people who are doing real hardcore work in our city. And so it is my pleasure to bring session 5 to you. And the real superstars here tonight is Baltimore Brothers and the people who are working with Captain Andrews. So with that, this partnership is being brought to you again by Baltimore City Children and Youth Fund and Baltimore Brothers. Baltimore has a critical need for more hope, healing, and healthy opportunities, especially for Black children, adolescents, and youth. This will require a better relationship among those who are working to create opportunities for their families, their neighborhoods, the organizations, and faith communities that they work with. BCYF and Baltimore Brother has organized a series of workshops and technical assistance sessions to transfer information to help foster relationships, infrastructure, and resources that will create and/or expand pathways to success for Baltimore's children, youth, and families. I guess I can read this unless somebody from Baltimore Brothers wants to read it. I got it. The mission of Baltimore Brothers is to design, implement, and coordinate strategies and initiatives to reduce crime in Baltimore City by using astute resourcefulness and leveraging community assets and relationships. The Children and Youth Fund. BCYF is a nonprofit organization stewarding public funds to ensure our children and youth are healthy, ready to succeed in school, and live in stable, safe, and supportive families and communities. All right, and if this is your first time joining us, you get to see all the wonderful sessions that you missed. Don't feel bad, but to go ahead and feel bad. Um, Tonight is mental health in Baltimore youth, and we're going to have a small group session that's going to be a little bit more targeted this Friday at 10 a.m. So you're going to want to register for that. I'm going to put the links to register in the chat for you. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Andrews. Please, if you will, if you have questions, put your questions in the Q&A box. Look at the bottom of your screen. You're going to see one box that says chat and another that says Q&A. Put your questions in the Q&A. Feel free to communicate with each other throughout. Put any ideas, anything that you want to share in the chat, but try not to put questions in the chat. Try to put your questions in the Q&A box. And with that, it is your show, Captain Andrews.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Shaq, man. Hey, Shaq, you could have took another 30 minutes, Shaq. First time I seen that introduction like that. I love how you did that. First and foremost, I want to thank God for this opportunity. I want to thank the Baltimore City Youth Fund for giving Baltimore brothers an opportunity to share and experience and learn and help be a part of the training with our experts of great leaders today. I really don't want to do a lot of talking about Baltimore brothers because this is a very important topic today, the subject matter. I just want to say, just in our mission, our goal has always been to reduce violence, to help young men out, to show them another way, to save as many lives as we possibly can, and then also to be examples, not perfect, but be examples for other young men and let them know it's a better way than selling drugs and carrying guns, than shooting your brother. So we are honored to be hired by the Baltimore City Youth Fund, and we are taking it serious. We love our city. We love Baltimore City. We're in love with the people, the citizens of Baltimore. And this is something that we put a lot of energy and time in, specifically tonight with the panelists. We met twice and the meetings was very intense. We went into a lot. I mean, we covered so much that honestly, they'll tell you that we really didn't want to stop talking. You know, that's how intense our meetings were. And I learned a great deal by listening to these experts, leaders that we're about to introduce. So once again, it's an honor, it's a pleasure, and we have some great training, some great information, and we want to get right into it. So once again, thank you, Brother Shaq, for them kind words. So today's title is Mental Health in Baltimore Youth, Stopping the Cycle of Violence. And before I forget, I can't forget, I got to get better at this, but I want to give respect and honor to Dr. Phil Leaf, who was my partner from the very beginning. He's a professor at Hopkins, and he'll be able to introduce himself later on. But I want to give respect and honor to Dr. Phil Leaf, who helped Baltimore brothers put this together. And he's very instrumental in making this a success so far. So I want to give Dr. Phil Leaf a shout out as well. And you'll be hearing from Doc in a minute. So first and foremost, we want to start off with the introduction because we know 2 hours go real quick, especially once we get to talking and the intensity behind the information and the training what this session offer. And before I forget again, and y'all please take it easy with me because I must say I'm a little nervous. I have to be honest, I'm a little nervous. And I know you all know, God can't use you if you ain't nervous. You know, that means you coming in front of his people and you respecting what you sharing and the training that we're about to get. So just forgive me and thank y'all for being patient with me. But we have a young lady that myself and Mark Mason did some work with her. Her daughter was shot on Fulton Avenue, and she'll be a part of the TNA that we're going to do on Friday. And her name is Jasmine. Her daughter's name is Kayla. I just wanted to give her a special shout out. I know she can hear me, but this is why we do this work for families like Jasmine and our beautiful little daughter that we adopted, Kaylin. Yeah. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. So our first panelist, who I met some years back, and she's always always had my respect, even when I didn't know her. I didn't know her name. I just seen her teaching days, partnering with the mayor's office, partnering with Baltimore brothers. And I just watched and listened to her one day. And we had about 30 students in the room. And after she finished speaking, I didn't really want to say anything. She just did an excellent job, and it was all around mental health. So, she's definitely an honor. She's a person who I have respect and honor for. But I want to have Asia just take a few minutes, introduce yourself, Asia. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Asia Doswell. I am the clinical program strategist for Keys and Powers. We are a youth advocacy program based in Baltimore City, but we service throughout the state of Maryland. And our approach is to provide services that teach non-linguistic approaches to healing. So we're looking at the fact that we've had these experiences of something, however, we don't know how to articulate them, but we do normally act out. And so what we do is find ways to do it through art, science, technology, engineering, math, STEAM, as well as some other therapeutic ways. And that way now we have a discussion of healing that everybody can be a part of versus separating it between a therapeutic process and other ways that people cope.
Awesome, thank you. And she was real brief. So listen, I want everybody to please, I hope you have a pad and a pen beside you. I guarantee you tonight that all of us want to benefit. And our goal is to come away with some points that we can share with other families, of our youth, other professionals about this information that we're going to get into tonight. So this next gentleman, Brother Mark Muhammad, who I worked with over the last 20 years. And honestly, I didn't know what Mark did until recently. And this guy's a monster when it comes to therapy, counseling. You would, if you're not thinking about it, you wouldn't really know because me and him work in another capacity. But I realize now he has always helped people out. And they just come in his office and they don't leave. And now I know why, Mark. I know why now. So can you give a brief introduction, Brother Mark? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. And peace and blessings to everybody in the panel and everybody that's watching. Thank you so much. So my name is Brother Mark Muhammad. Some of you who may have worked with me professionally may know me as Mark Sneller. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor and owner of a newly found group called Conscious Minds Counseling Center. You'll be hearing about more of that later on. And at this point, I have decades of experience working in the human service field. I've worked in the child protective field, working with at-risk children. I have worked in one of Maryland drug courts, working with hundreds and hundreds of clients and trying to impact their lives. I also have worked as an EAP counselor, working with doctors and nurses and hospital staff. And I am presently in private practice and looking forward to doing some great work with you all. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
So, okay, this guy right here, man, we call him Gucci, but he's really a bishop. He's a professor at Morgan State. And man, I gotta be honest, I met Bishop maybe about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. And his mind is sharper than the way he dressed, so he dressed excellent, right? But when you hear him speak and then you spend time with him, and his character is even louder than his mind is. And I mean that because, he has helped me out and I wasn't expecting it from him. But when a man helps you out and you're not expecting it, then you know it's real, right? So the bishop has taught, we actually been in his church on multiple occasions. I want to say at least 10 to 20 times. And one day we had a session on mental health and trauma. And he had offered all of us training and services, but I didn't get a chance to go. I want to say we had about at least 10, maybe 5 to 10 leaders that took the training. And these was doctors, attorneys, lawyers, professional men, pastors, bishops, professional men that took this training, and they came back and shared it with us. And then we had about 100 men in the audience. And I was blown away by that. And now everybody wants to take the training now. But it's just an honor to be amongst great men. And I just, Bishop Daniels, go right ahead and introduce yourself, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Cap. Blessings to everybody. I'm just glad to be a part of this team, this great team, among these geniuses, really. I've been at Morgan State University for about 18 years, training licensed professional social workers, community advocates, and I'm real excited about that, developed the human behavior and the social environment, because most of the time we know that mental health, mental illness ranges from across the lifespan. If you can get it early, in some cases, you prevent it from moving into something a little bit more severe. You can. So again, that's been my task at Morgan. I'm a part of the great trauma task force for Baltimore City, the president of the Ministers Conference Empowerment, CDC. And of course, I'm excited to be a part of the We Our Us men's movement. And I'm just glad to be a part of this panel. I really am.
Man, thank you, Bishop. Man, we appreciate it. And I know you had to change your schedule for this. So I'm glad you did that. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. This next leader who we met in the streets, I don't even know how me and Brother Mark Mason met, but one thing I can say, this guy is on time. And we established a personal relationship through unfortunate circumstances. And we just described one of them with our sister, Jasmine, and her daughter, Kaylin, when she was shot. And then also 2 women that was murdered. I mean, honestly, the list goes on. We don't need to talk about that kind of situation, but that's the reality of how we met. But Mark does something a little different, but it's a very important angle that where he comes from, particularly as it relates to victims. And a lot of times, as we all know, the families don't get no support once they lose a loved one to gun violence or any kind of violence, because Mark does it all. But you know, when we lost, you know, when I'll just say this, when 2 of the family members was murdered, 2 women, 2 mothers, I was blown away how Brother Mark was able to help them with the rent, with programs, with resources. I mean, the list goes on. And honestly, that's something that like I'm personally wasn't used to, because so many people lose their lives and don't have insurance. You know, they can't pay their bills. They lost their loved one who was the breadwinner. But Mark comes right in, and with our relationship, our partnership, and we make it a little easier, which is very important. And it may sound small the way I'm saying it, but trust me, it's not small, because once you're in them shoes, and I'm talking about when you sitting there with the family, they really appreciate that the service that Mark's offered them, and that's how me and Mark met. So go right ahead, Mark.
Appreciate that, Cap.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the accolades, man. Again, honored to be a part of this panel of geniuses, as Professor Daniel said. I am Mark Mason, project director of YSAP. It's stands for Youth Services and Advocacy Project. We give resources to anyone between the age of 11 and 24 that's been a victim of a crime. I've been involved in the program for about 5 years, been supervising it for about, I guess 3. Since we've been there, We've served over 300 families with number of different resources, housing resources, getting them connected to mental health services, paying for CNA, GNA classes, CDL classes, whatever it takes to help a family start to overcome their trauma, we're there to do. Privileged to work with a number of different agencies, a number of different individuals on the panel with us right now, Corey, Cap, Dr. Phil, Asia. Honored to be a part of it, honored to be serving our city.
Awesome, man. Thank you, bro. This is definitely a joy for me, a treat for me. Last but not least is our president of We Are Us, the senior co-pastor for Grace City Church, and then also a family man who I met during the 2015 riots. And we was on the front line together for weeks. And I mean on the front line. I don't mean behind it. I mean on the front line. And I had no idea who Corey was. I didn't know who he was. But what I did know is we was able to work together and we was able to support our city through all that chaos. And we brought some calm to the city. So I just want to introduce Corey as a man who I know that is striving to continue to be an example, not only for his church, but just the men that's around him. And he has high standards as it relates to, his morality and just striving to be righteousness. You need them kind of men. But also he's about to get his doctorate. So I'm gonna be calling him Dr. Pastor Corey President real soon. But it's an honor to serve a man who's very familiar with mental health and trauma and healing. Go right ahead, Pastor.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet. It is an honor to be on this line with these geniuses. So grateful to have this conversation. We Are Us is an organization simply to do four things. We protect, we connect, we mediate, and we message. We go out into the community where the most violent and the most dangerous parts of the community, and we bring presence to protect and connect, bring a message of hope, love, and more importantly, we bring resources to the community, and we will continue to do that. And with that, we've seen all families, all situations, all circumstances, and would love to share tonight on ways that we can begin to heal and have some resilience to these things that we're seeing in the violence in our city.
Man, thank you. So, yes. So before we get into the questions for our panelists, Dr. Phil, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins. Hey, Doc, can you just give us an overview and some of the things over the last 5 sessions and what we're about to do? Thanks, Doc. Appreciate you.
Sure. I'm real glad to be on this session. As Captain Andrew said, we sort of started off with overviews and actually had the mayor on the first session is talking about a lot of different aspects of violence and trauma, and also the president of the Youth Fund. And one of the things is, as the Youth Fund, there's funds out there, and as you'll hear later on, they've actually released the initial request for applications, so you can find out more. But this is not meant to be sort of a traditional, oh, here's what you should be applying for. It's really meant to also be networking, to better understand what is working, how you could be connecting both with the panelists, but some of the other things the panelists are talking about. But also importantly, besides watching this live or watching the videos, a lot of leaders, a lot of foundations, a lot of government folks, and they need to hear your suggestions, and both through your questions and particularly on Friday, the discussions. What are some of the structural impediments? What's not working that we need to be getting together to fix? What's making it difficult for you? Both the panelists will be talking about some of this, but also obviously also you are on the audience have had both positive and less than positive experiences trying to break the cycle of violence, trying to make sure your own staff aren't traumatized and can get services. And so we really sort of see this, and we're really appreciative of the Youth Funds to really want to have this broader overview in discussion, and not just sort of be, well, what's everybody going to be applying for money for, but how do we understand what's working, how we can best work together, as well as if there are gaps, and other things. What not just that there's a problem, but what are the suggestions? How can we be solving this? And I think, as you see, it's a really diverse group of folks, both on the panel tonight and in the audience. And so we see this. You've seen the other presentations there, and you can go on the website to see the upcoming ones. Hopefully, you'll come back and really put your inputs into multiple discussions and the technical assistance as we're moving forward. Thanks, Captain.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doc. Man, hey, Doc, you got some fans on here too. Yay, Phil Leaf. Yes, you got fans, Doc, already, man. You just spoke 1 second. Good stuff, Doc. All right, so we're going to get right into it. So Asia is our first panelist who I'm looking forward to hearing from. And please, y'all, I'm not going to rush y'all. You don't have to rush your answer. This is very important for us. So please, you don't have to rush your answers, all right? I don't want nobody thinking you got to rush, especially the answers, right? And when I first, when I read the title, Mental Health in Baltimore Youth, Stopping the Cycle of Violence, the first thing come to my mind is a young man that's carrying weapons around. He's high on drugs, and he don't know what to do next. When I see this title for me, and then after that, everything else is negative results, negative action, right? So what my goal is tonight, what I would like to do, y'all, is basically the questions that we have. I want to ask the questions that we came up with for us. So for instance, like Asia, some of the questions you sent me, Mark, I want to ask y'all some of the questions that we went through that you all can relate to right away, right? So and then you always can go back if you want to. Okay, it's fine with us, because everything that we have to say tonight, we already been through this. It's going to be helpful. It's going to be helpful. So Asia, I'm going to start with you first. What are the hierarchy of needs that all individuals have, and how does that affect what clinicians and others need to consider when they are working with children and youth who have been impacted by violence?
I'm glad you gave a disclaimer about taking time, because I can be extremely long-winded. I'm sometimes
Yes.
my own audience. But I think the biggest part is that when we're talking about healing and we're talking about trauma, this is a generational cycle. And the term that we always hear is generational curse. I don't believe that we're cursed. I think we just have to find new ways to do things. And so, remember when we got to school and everybody was big on the food guy pyramid? You got to eat all your vegetables. You got to make sure you get your grains and your base. And so we've always looked at the triangle as the precipice, like it's the perfect shape. It's even on all sides. It's totally balanced. It can stand alone. It can do all of that. And so when you look at a triangle and how it's set up, the first thing you start with is the bottom and the base. So there is a theory called Maslow's hierarchy of need, which looks at the evolution of people and how if we don't get things in order in a particular way, we won't be able to meet our optimal self. And so the first layer of Maslow is the physiological needs. We know that a lot of the youth and the families that we serve are homeless, or they're poverty stricken. And I'm sorry, the word is not even homeless, because home is in the heart. They are without housing. But being mindful that when you can't pay your gas and electric, when you can't pay your water, when you're not able to maintain a job, when you're being the care provider for your grandparents and great grandparents, or your grandchildren and your great grandchildren, we're missing some of those sandwich generations where we have one person that's being pulled on both sides. And so what happens is when you're not able to meet your own needs for survival, it's really hard to try to trust people, work on mental health, want to be able to matriculate through these processes of feeling better. And so what we look at is that if we don't find a way to stabilize a way for youth to be able to come in and say, hey, I haven't had a hot meal, I need a place to stay, there's no questions asked, then we're not going to be able to really get to the root of this. It's also when we see youth that are in need and have these things going on, the community knows who they can reach out to that can do emergent action. Our issue right now as a city is we know the need, but we can't take action because we lack proper resources. The resources could be funding not coming in on time. It could be not being able to find referrals. I literally run a $300,000 program funded through Family League, through the Governor's Office of Youth and Crime Prevention, as the Youth Services Bureau for Baltimore City. Our first year running that program, I only had maybe 50, 60 participants because I couldn't reach people to tell me what youth needed help. However, I could ride around Baltimore City streets and see youth squeegeeing, panhandling, digging through trash cans, asking things like that. And so it's like, when you see something, say something. But the other part of that is as organizations, how do we show up? You know, sometimes what we said on Monday may not be available on Wednesday evening. And being transparent with families and saying, hey, I know what I said I could do. However, there was a change. That's something that we have to get better with. Also, in terms of community members and how they engage with us, if you need something, say something. Closed mouths don't get fed. And also, we're not mind readers. We're writing these programs and we're responding to all of these grants that are coming out based on what we think people want, because that's our observation. What we're looking for is community members to say, hey, that thing doesn't work for us. That doesn't fit our neighborhood need. Can you all change your services to meet us where we are so that we can now get some actual outcomes that give better results? And so when you're looking at the base of what we're doing, we're asking people to come and sit in mental health programs. We're asking them to come and sit in substance abuse programs, confess their sins, and then go back to their lives. The reality is what is your life? How is your life moving along? And more importantly, what parameters have we put in place to ensure that at the end of this, you feel safe, you feel comfortable, you know who your point people are, and you feel that there is love and infinity in everything that is done. Because I'll tell you, as a mom who used to have to go down to the Department of Social Services on Broadway or out to Baltimore County at 6401 York Road, I was looked at as if I was a bad person for coming and asking for assistance, but I was told that it was made to me. I've been profiled before. As you all see, I am a raging unicorn of colors and all of these things, and people judge me by how I look, but they don't know my story. This is why we have to get to a place where there's no questions asked. Let us get you what you need. And then once we get you stable, then we can start digging into some of those more intimate places and spaces where you've been violated, where someone told you that they had your back and then they didn't show up, or more importantly, that they abandoned you. Because I have a lot of people that they're like, well, my therapist was here, and then all of a sudden they didn't say anything. Let me tell y'all something. There's not enough therapists for all of the work that needs to be done. This is a community and a family issue. And if we don't start looking at ourselves as the community and the family to each other, this is only going to continue to get worse. So as much as we would like professionals to be in this space to hold the line, we also don't have the capacity, but we are able to teach the skill. And then you can come back for maintenance. You can be an advocate or a peer for people that you know you've been through similar situations. This isn't about embarrassment. It's about sharing. It's about caring. It's about being able to empathize with the people who sit across from you who've lost sons to community violence, to be able to deal with kids who've been molested or raped or had these heinous crimes handed to them. And instead of it being gossip, it was, let me tell you how I got through this. I went and talked to Roberta's house. I went through the YSB program with Keys. I was sent through the program that Mr. Mason has for youth who have already been, victimized and need some support. We are here, but we have to work as a collective. I do. I'm on it. Did you want me to jump into another one, Captain, or did you want to swing to somebody else?
Oh, no, you good. I didn't know
Okay.
you was finished. Man, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm just taking notes. Just forgive me for that. I'm taking notes. I have to take notes. I need a special admin, but no, I'm doing it myself tonight. So thank you, Asia. So Brother Mark Sneller, I'm coming right to you. So Brother Mark, in Baltimore, children grow up thinking that shootings, drug use, drug overdoses, parents not being able to read better than their 10-year-old children is normal. How do we change that?
Okay, yes, sir. One of the first things I think that has to happen when we're working with children, families, and this is what they think is normal, is to first acknowledge to them that sometimes for them it is normal. And a lot of times when we start working with children, we start working with families, we try to, in other words, it's normal in their life. It's not that it's normal behavior that we want to encourage, but it is their experience. So the first thing I do is I start off acknowledging that I understand that this has been your experience thus far, so that within that subculture, and if you will, that's what's happening around them. After we do that, then we can get to a place where we start helping them to form another narrative. What do I mean by another narrative? We really have to explore with the children their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations. What is it that they would like to do? Where do they see themselves at? Because contrary to popular belief, skills are great and know-how is great, but if we don't instill and help to instill hope and faith and some belief in themselves, then it's almost impossible to move someone forward. So you help to start establishing a new narrative of what they would like things to look like. After you begin to establish that new narrative, then you can help them to chart a map of how they can get there. The pitfalls that are going to be along the way, that yes, and you continue to be encouraging through this process and through this period of helping them navigate their narrative. Finally, we all have to make sure that we're not dream crushers. If children and families have a dream or an aspiration, our only role, or one of our primary roles anyway, is to help them get to what that is. Any of us has ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X or other things, or if we've just spoke with Black men and Black women and brown people, almost all of us have a story of somebody telling us about something that we wanted to do, and then someone saying to us, you can't do it. Or that's a silly thing. Why don't you do this other thing instead? So that's the short answer to that question, Brother Kaplan. Thank you.
Man, and that was excellent. And I hope I ain't throw you off guard.
Nah, you good.
And he knew. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Can I add on to that? So that steps into the resilience piece. And that's a word that we hear around, being resilient. And so the definition of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficult toughness, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity, flexibility. So you think about a rubber band. After a while, that rubber band get dry rot. After a while, it gets stretched out. And after a while, it's not able to maintain it. And so we keep using this term, our Baltimore City youth are resilient. They're resilient. No, they're not bouncing back. That rubber band is wore out. We have not set them up to be able to determine what their new elasticity looks like, because every time they turn around, they're being hit with something that's pulling that band until it pops. And so what we're dealing with now is people are popping. They have allowed these things that have dwelled and swooned around for so long to now surface. It's like the curd coming to the top. And it's like, what do you do when you've had enough? What do you do when your pot is boiling and you have nowhere to dump your water? Eventually it burns over, and then it could mess up the eye or put out the gas. That is what we're having to happen. And when you're going into schools, you're going into your home, you're dealing with your family, you're dealing with community members, and all of this is pulling at you. How do you expect people to keep bouncing back? So let's be clear that when we use the word resilient, there has to be a pullback from that But if this is an 8-year-old child that's been in therapy for 1 hour a week, but they're going back home to an environment for 24 hours a day, how can you bounce back if the family isn't involved in the healing? So we got to be mindful that this has a micro individual, a meso, more of a family, and a macro community perspective to it in order to make it work, which is itself its own micro, meso, macro, its own pyramid. So that fit right in with what Mr. Muhammad was saying in terms of this is the normalcy.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. And thank you for jumping in, because you had something to share. So you perfectly fine with that. And we are going to get to that word, resiliency. So thank you for that. And yes, ma'am. Wonderful. So Corey, Pastor Corey, you up next. I know I said things switched around, Corey, but I'm coming your way right now.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So one of the things that a couple weeks ago, we put up a picture of the 1600 block of North, I think it was Port Street.
Yes, sir.
Port Street, and it's about 3 houses on that block. But 2 of the young men are in our program, and we've been helping them out for the last 3 to 6 months because we got a referral from the principal, Ms. Webb. And when we talk about trauma, and when the young men are waking up in these communities where the one side of the block is missing and the other side only have 3 houses and the rest of the houses are boarded up and the other 2 houses, are terrible. And then he opened his refrigerator up, there's nothing in his refrigerator, but then on top of that, when he leave his house, he got to deal with the drugs and the guns and the shootings and everything else that's around him. And then of course, that impacts his school, that impacts his thinking. So my question to you, Pastor, is how can we help people? How can we help youth who have witnessed trauma so they are not traumatized?
Yes, sir. Yes, that's a great question, Cap. And the good thing is, and I love what Asia said, which is this idea of resilience and the idea of the rubber band, because unfortunately, if the rubber band breaks, you can never put a rubber band back together. That's like an ACL tear. They don't put the ACL back together, they have to replace it. So the question becomes, what's the replacement? And I can tell you what the replacement is. I can tell you what the replacement is when the rubber band breaks. You need first a compassionate witness. You need a safe space. And then you also need, and go Mark Muhammad, you need to retell the story and help them to reframe the story correctly. So watch this, look at the title of the thing, so they can get off the traumatic cycle that keeps running in their head and they can get a truth of a story and then begin to reframe and create that new idea that you talked about, Mark Muhammad. That's what we have to do. And this is the thing, this is why it's easy, because all of those things are in the community. We got safe spaces, we got compassionate witnesses. And so watch this, all we have to do is get on the suffering bench of those who are talking and begin to listen. And as we are listening to them, point them to where the resources are, point them to where the support is, and begin to work that cycle over and over again. That's all we do at We Are Us, is that we come to a space. Now watch this, here's the problem. We want them to come to us. I said We Our Us comes to the space where they are, in the place where the violence occur, and then we begin to listen to their story. Now watch this, be careful, because you gotta watch how you're talking to them, because you don't want your language to re-traumatize them. So make sure when you come to that space, you come into that space understanding what's happened and what's going on around them. Because one time we had a little girl that we kept trying to say, come on outside so we can meet you. But the little girl was in a corner, watch this, shutting down from the trauma, because 3 houses down the street was where she actually got shot. So she has not even walked into that space yet. And so we're calling her out into the trauma, and she says, no, I'm not gonna go. I wanna stay right here on the doorway. And that's why we have to know the situation, be a compassionate witness. We have to have a safe space, and we have to allow them to retell the story. And I love what you said, Brother Mark, on their terms, and begin to shape the narrative.
Man, that's what I'm talking about right there. That's what I'm talking about. Man, I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I got to hear from y'all. Bishop, I'm coming to you, Professor Daniels. So we talk about healing when a youth or a teenager is shot and they survive, and we talk about bringing them back to an environment where they're supposed to learn school. But when they hear a gunshot or a car backup, it's more trauma or more pain or more remembrance of what happened to them or what they witnessed. So my question to you is, Bishop, because we deal with this every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we dealing with this. Is it possible, or can a child or a youth, what response or what answer that we can give them as it relates to them healing? And how does that impact them? Because honestly, this is something that we need to share, and we need to help people get through this.
Yeah, excuse my voice. One of the challenges that we do have is across and I think Asia said it, the Maslow hierarchy of needs, moving through the physical, the safety, making sure all of those needs, belongingness are in place, and then beginning to build from there for their self-esteem and moving them towards some level of self-actualization. And sometimes they never get there. At Morgan, I teach across the lifespan, infancy, childhood, of course, then you move into adolescence, then you move into young adulthood, and then of course, middle, and then later adulthood, those 5 lifespans. But the challenges become very difficult because what really should happen, even when you look at mental health, it is across the lifespan. Certain mental health onsets really start in childhood. And what we're asking young people to do is think we almost have to take them all the way back and create for them, because a lot of times people think it's just going straight into a trauma-informed situation. But what we really need is healing engaged, healing-centered, engaged treatment and help, because most of the time we spend too much time staying with the trauma itself and never moving them to what healing looks like. But at the very onset of infancy and childhood, we have to first create, if you want to assist young people with mental health, we have to first create the environment that nurtures them. And far too often, they go back to environments that are not necessarily nurturing. When you start talking about nutrition, when you start talking about all of those nurturing and nourishment, when you start talking about all of those factors that are critical to create an environment, we want to start at the child when we need to start at the system. We need to begin to look at not just the family, but across what they call the social determinants or the conditions that help people grow in the first place. You get anxiety disorders, developmental disorders, intellectual disabilities, all early on with the child whose environment is not set for them to flourish in the first place. Somebody said it, and I will repeat it. We have to function as a collective. We have to realize about food, nutrition, what the family structure looks like, what the community infrastructure looks like, to bring them back into a same environment and expect something better for them. They don't need their help, we do. Our systems need more help than our children do, because we continue to create the same environment. After all of these studies, after all of these tests, we know what factors cause mental health and some of the cumulative challenges that's going on in our young people, but then we send them back home to the same environments, systems, structures, and institutions. So again, we almost need to ask the question, who really is sick?
Mm.
Is it our children, or is it the continued systems that we keep putting them in and then telling them, reach your self-actualization and your peak performance? I will say to you, we are continuing to keep feeding this whole, I think we got off on in our discussion about resilience, because both were right, Brother President Corey and also Asia, because when you start to talk about you're telling children to bounce back. I did an article and it didn't get accepted because the field did not understand what maladaptive resilience looked like. You're telling somebody to bounce back that don't have a back to bounce to, and you're telling them they have never had a normal environment, and you're saying bounce back. What if they are bouncing back to something very maladaptive and they will never be able to thrive in that kind of environment? I argue, again, somebody might argue against that. I argue that the structures, the systems need to be so set so that our children can flourish, because when you look across the lifespan, mental health issues continue to grow across the lifespan, but basically because the early environment is not set for soundness. We need, instead of trauma-informed, we need something that's called healing-centered engagement, where we don't focus on the pathology, but the possibility. Not what's wrong with them, but what's right with them. And start there.
Oh, Bishop, you gotta run that back. Say that one more time, because you gotta say that one more time, Bishop.
Don't pay him no mind, Bishop. Don't that's Shaq, man. Hey, but guess what? This is being recorded, and I can tell you right now, this is going to be a study for my team. So I want to thank you all in the beginning. I mean, we just getting started. We got an hour left. I see the president is on. Thank you, President. Please feel free to jump in whenever you want to, Miss Alicia. Thank you very much. Man, that was beautiful, Bishop. So we want to get right into Mark Mason. Mark, now, you know, I want to say Mark has one of the toughest jobs. I can't say he has deep, but he has one of the toughest jobs, because it's like once the work that me and Mark do together, we've been dealing directly with victims of gun violence. And it's crazy because most of them has been women. And then on top of that, you know, even if it's not a woman, he still have to deal with the mother of the son or the husband. And you know, a lot of times you don't know what to say. You don't know what to say because you don't really, like Pastor Corey said, you gotta listen to them, you know, and sometimes they may need insurance money, or they may need just somebody to hug them, or they want answers on who murdered that son or that daughter. And Mark has to deal with that. But, you know, Mark, I want to ask you a couple questions, Mark, and you can connect them. You can tie them right in, Mark. So Mark, the first one is what are some of the services that are available that our families may not know about? And then why is it important to support children and youth immediately after they have been impacted by an event that's trauma response? Oh, excuse me. Let me read that over. Why is it important to support children and youth immediately after they have been impacted by an event? What would an immediate trauma response look like?
Okay, I'm going to start with the second question you asked.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Why is it important to support children and youth immediately? In my role, what I've learned in a couple of years that I've been serving victims is that, you know, when I first started, every interview that I had, there was historic trauma, right? There was trauma that had affected this individual over a matter of time. I'm talking about years, Cap, right? And, you know, the two perspectives to look at it is that, you know, immediately when you're having those conversations with you, you know, you're telling them things that you can help them with, but there's a sense of disbelief because they've heard it all before, right? Not only that, you know, some of them, you know, aren't in a good place because there's been so many years of trauma that they've had to kind of overcome. And just like everybody said, all of our genius panelists said, you know, trying to become resilient, you know, that rubber band that Asia was talking about being stretched and stretched and stretched. You know, that's years of stretching, right? So you have situations that, you know, kind of cause their doubt. So, you know, it's just because we live in the city that we do, you know, with the repetitive violence that occurs and so on and so forth. When I do get in touch with a family, you know, I would say about 85% of them have had historic trauma, right? So I have to come in, just like you said, having to come in and have that tough conversation, not only around, you know, trying to get them to buy in and understand that I'm going to help them by any means necessary, right? But also, you know, for them to actually be able to move past, or, you know, just for a second, you know, to be able to focus on what they need in contrast to what happens to them. The most important thing about immediately stepping in to offer resources is that, you know, we have to break the trend of historic trauma that has plagued our city over years. I'm talking about young people at ages 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 that, you know, have grown into younger people, older people, 18, 19, 20, that have had this, that continue to suffer from this historic trauma. That's why I think, you know, I talked to you before about how important my partnership with you all is, because, you know, when these events happen, we don't wait, Cap. You know, I get a phone call from you, and I'm talking maybe 2 or 3 days later, we're out at the houses having conversations with these families. And I think the most important thing about that is to make sure that, you know, that historic trauma doesn't, you know, begin. Another cycle of historic trauma doesn't begin. I think that's why it's so important to kind of step in and do that. The services that are available, you know, and I did want to, you know, jump back on. You had another part of a question.
Go ahead.
Why
Go
is
right
it
ahead.
to respond to more than just a single victim or a shooting or a physical assault? You know, we don't just address the individual, we address the family, right? And we come into a truly holistic approach to be able to come in and authentically make sure that this family is grounded after what has happened to them. So I'm talking, you know, jumping on resources. I'm talking about, you know, if they need to be relocated out of the area that the event happened, you know, we'll work on helping them do that. If we have to help, you know, someone that's involved in a domestic violence situation to, you know, recover and get their life back together, we're going to do that. And like I said, just by any means necessary. I think that's the most important thing. These young people have just historic trauma, and, you know, just it's been built over and over again and been placed, more trauma has been placed on more trauma and trauma and trauma. And, you know, I think that's the goal, to be able to stop that cycle, right? And Professor Daniels just said it best. If we don't come together and actually do it collectively, right, it's going to be difficult for us to be able to do that. You know, if we find a way in the city to be able to come in, you know, I brought this analogy to my office maybe a couple of years ago about placing the family's need inside of the middle of our office as if it was a tree, right? And that tree actually has branches. So the family actually has branches that point to so many different areas, right?
Mhm.
And the funny thing is that if you have that branch pointing at you and your organization, you step in and do your specialty, right? You step in and do exactly what it is that you do, right? To come in and help that family start working on building resiliency, start working on building recovery, right? And just imagine if every branch, every organization that branch, that tree and those branches are pointing to is able to step in and authentically help that family to their best expertise, we have resiliency.
Man, I agree. And listen, you know, I remember when that brother who got murdered had 11 children, and we went out Cherry Hill, and you helped. I don't know how many baby mothers he had. We're not gonna say his name, because it's a known person, but you helped all of them. All of them got help, and they all was pleased. So that's the kind of work that people don't know about. But I want to say that was very important because the family was suffering. We raised money for them too, but the family was suffering. And thank God for you just having the perseverance or the resiliency that served them different families and all them and all those children.
I appreciate that, Kevin. I think it's just, by any means necessary. Like it just, I learned from Asia, like there's too much talking that's being done, right? And there has to be some action. And we just keep talking on panels and we just continue to talk in discussions about what should be done. You get what I'm saying? Like, when is somebody going to take what happens in that discussion or what happens on that panel and go and show action, right? And I kind of think that that's what, hopefully that's the trend that I'm looking to kind of start, right, with us, even with We Are Us and what you all are doing on the ground. Somebody had to step in and do that. So I say it all the time. You have to also take your small victories as well. You, Cap, Dr. Phil, Corey, Dr. Bunley, y'all, like, this was a long time coming, right? And it's up to us as, these supporting organizations to step in and help you all wherever is needed. That's why I'm always a phone call away.
And thank you. But tonight, I'm coming to you next, Asia. Tonight, I want y'all to talk tonight. We don't need no action tonight. No, thank you though, brother. Asia, hold your question. I'm coming right at you next. Now, this next go round, because we do have some questions. Dr. Phil just noticed that we want to get to the questions. So on this next response from this next round, we want y'all just cut it back a little bit. All right, but I'm gonna tailor fit the questions for you all to the best of my knowledge, the best of my ability. But please feel free to speak what's on your heart because we want to hear from y'all. So Asia, let me ask you this first question, then respond to what you was going to say as well, okay? All right, so this is the question. This is the questions for you. This is the question for you, Asia. So many times the community receives help from mental health professionals, but after a short period of time, they feel abandoned. Some of the clients or some of the perpetrators or the victims, they don't get no help. And then they right back and dealing with the same situation. As an individual, as a person who has to deal with this every day, how can you help me to help that individual? What steps should I take to serve that individual who's been who basically been abandoned or hasn't received no help or don't know how to get help?
So I think the biggest thing is that these generational trauma concerns didn't happen overnight. And so they're going to take twice as long to heal. And so the other part of that is when you're dealing with minimal time, it's about having all of your ducks in a row. As an organization, I know what my capacity is. I know what Mark's capacity is. I know what Baltimore's Brothers' capacity is, and so on and so forth. And so what we say is, hey, look, we're all in the same pool, swimming in the same area. Instead of us all trying to cover these areas, why don't we do it as a collective and say, hey, The first thing we know that this young person is going to need is housing. So start with housing first. Don't come in talking about how to get better when you're not even stabilized. So, hey, we're going to go ahead and get first month's rent, security deposit paid, da, 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 da. While I'm doing this, you're also going to be getting a call from these other 3 organizations that are going to be doing these things for you at the same time. If you do not hear from them, come back to me. I will go and get them and we will come together as a collective. And the bigger part is when you first started this, you painted a picture about when we talked about the title of this, the type of thing or person that we saw was a young man of color in violence with guns. We are missing a huge demographic right now, which is the stable middle class that has been impacted by COVID, that is getting ready to slide into a place where we're currently already doing the work. And our thing is, we're always fixated on those who don't have and those who can't do and haven't been doing. What do you do for the people who were able to maintain? And this is the first time they're having this experience. As a mom who may be a nurse that was able to hold her house down, whatever else was going on, and now she had to cut back shifts. She doesn't have Big Mama around to be the daycare provider, or the school's not doing after school programs because of COVID. How does a mom who's never had to function in a place of trauma or crisis get assistance? And so when we're looking at these things, and this is for my funders on here, because I'm gonna call y'all out too, please take these parameters off of the money. Everybody 16 to 24 does not need help. I got babies as young as 8 telling me what they need in their home, and I cannot help them because they do not mark a box that my funder told me that I had to use my money. Trauma does not stop at 24 or 21. You're able to be on your parents' health insurance now to the age of 26, which speaks to the fact that you need some coverage up until your ability to be able to maintain on your own. If we do not find a way to put resources in home for a minimum of 6 months with cash in hand to supplement a completely different income. Now, be clear, the minimum wage in Maryland, I think it's 1010, which is minimum wage, times 40 hours a week is only $400. Times 2 weeks is only $8. The average rent in this city is over $825. So how can a family survive when they're working to pay rent? So these are the things that when we come in, hey, I'm gonna take the rent for the next 6 months. They're gonna take the gas and electric. They're gonna take the water. We've taken the financial piece off the table. What comes next? Now, focusing on you, getting you in these places and spaces, and be clear, therapy is not a lifelong journey. If you were on this call and you have been with your therapist longer than 12 months, and you have not gone from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly, you need a new therapist. Also, your needs change as you evolve. I don't go to my podiatrist to get my teeth work on. I go to a orthodontist. If you came in crisis dealing with your whoever situation, your entanglement and your kids, and now you've gotten that handled, you should not be still seeing the same therapist if that is their specialty. So that's me also calling out clinicians on here, go get a specialty. You cannot be a generalist practice in this work because nothing that we do is general. My specialty is urban children, youth, and family. I am a macro social worker. That is what I do. I don't deal with minimal case loads and 25 people. I deal with 25 orgs and 25 communities. Know your place in your work and call out your people. Because if a doctor came in that was doing neurology, but you was here for ophthalmology to get your eyes worked on, you would be pissed. Stop taking it because these organizations have a caseload open to take you when you're not getting your needs met. Call them out. The same way you get mad when teachers say something to your kids that's inappropriate, call your therapist out if they're not meeting your needs. And the other part of this is therapy is about learning skills that you can use over and over and over again. I have a 5-week group that I do with couples specifically about calling out our traumas, how we deal with them. It's identifying the trauma, how you've already been coping, the new ways that you need to cope, and making amends so that you can change going forward. And when those things come up, you start at the beginning. How was this impacting? How have I responded? Does my response meet what I needed to do to feel better about myself? If not, let me go back to the drawing board. If it does, let me try it out for a good 30, 45, 60, 90 days. And if it's working, it's now part of my process. But when a new problem comes up, go right back. Don't go right to your coping. You have to consistently assess, evaluate, and change. We are in life cycles. Everything that is born dies. everything that we do will come back up, but you should be a little bit deeper in your work. It was surface at first, but now with 35, 40, and 50, you should be able to call it out differently. But that also means that we have to be clear and transparent about the hurt. Bring your things to the table so we can call it out, because I can't fix what I can't see. And I know that it hurts. I know that you don't want to say it because it's not your reality and it's not real. Guess what, baby? It's all our realities. And I'm so sorry that it happened to you. But what I will tell you is that whatever you believe in your creator and your universe, as unique as he made you down to your DNA and to your fingerprints, we all deal with the same traumas. You are not that special. And I would rather have an ally next to me standing with me who's been through it than a person who's offering me sympathy, but has never been in my shoes telling me what I should do. Sorry. I hope I answered your question.
No, please. Yes. I'm glad this is being recorded. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, yes, thank you. That needs to be studied, what you just shared. And I know you need a lot of time. So that's why you was personally invited. Thank you, sister. I appreciate that. That was deep. Brother, so we have a question that I want to, I'm coming to you next, Muhammad, but I want Bishop and Coy, just take a few minutes to answer this question, because it's been in a chat and been a Q&A for a minute. Do you find some Black churches still stigmatizes getting mental health help? So Bishop, we'll start with you, Coy, and then go right to Bishop. Help us with that question, please.
Well, I will say this, overall, Christendom has gotten a lot better in the idea of mental health. We've grown in the more growing churches. We've grown to understand that the pastor in the church understands the difference between pastoral care and therapy. I am one who will be the first one to say, I don't do therapy. I do pastoral care. I'm a very good pastoral care counselor, but I do not do therapy. When it crosses the line to therapy, when you have to go to the DSM-5 or whatever number it is, that ain't me. You know what I mean? So I got you. So we have grown in that area with the pastor believing that he's supposed to do it all. And there are churches that still stigmatize mental health? I'm sure. Overall, as Christendom, I think we have grown a whole lot in understanding the difference. One of the things for me, I just wanted to throw out there, Asia, I think it's important that you pushed out is that, this idea of trauma, this PTSD, but I don't think the answer is resilience. I think it's PTSD. I think it's PTSD. We have to have, for post-traumatic stress, we got to have post-traumatic growth. In order to post-traumatic growth, and I wish I tagged that term, but a man named Andrew Perv tagged that, that although we have all of this going on, there are still areas that we are continuing to grow in, and we meet a person where they are, and as long as they're making steps up, we can find some sense of growth in them right where they are. And so I think everyone has the privilege of doing that. And I think that's why the church today have shifted, because we're trying to grow our congregation, not numbers, but grow them as individuals. We understand that doesn't help. And a lot of the problems we're seeing across our desks is mental illness. And people are stuck. Bishop, you wanted to add anything to that? Bishop Daniels?
Yeah, let me just read the question to him again. So Bishop, do you find some Black churches still stigmatize getting mental health help? He was having some trouble. You're able to hear? You're on mute, Bishop.
All right, so is he talking? Is Bishop talking?
He's connecting now. Yeah, there he is.
Man.
Can you hear and respond, Bishop?
He's trying to respond.
Can't even see him. I mean,
okay. You may just have to move on, Cap. I think he's having
we'll get him. We'll get him. We have the president up, and she has on that lovely dress, lovely top. We have to hear from her. It's very important. Mr. Lee, can you just share a few words so far, what you've been hearing? Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Andrew. Thanks for letting me come up here and just greet everyone. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for being so generous with the sharing of your wisdom and your lived experience. We are grateful. And thank you everyone for all of our attendees. Thank you for attending tonight to behold and participate in this really dynamic discussion about mental health. So I'm really excited. I'm excited about the quality of the questions coming through. And I saw a comment in the chat about funders. And I just want to say, as a funder, we have to do better about supporting organizations that are led by culture bearers, that are led by folks who know the work, who can do the work best. We really hope at BCYF that folks have seen our call for proposals for the Grassroots Fund. So we are investing over $5 million in organizations with that are working on the ground to impact children and youth throughout the city of Baltimore. And being here tonight, I'm going to send this recording out to all of the funders in my network tomorrow morning, because it's sessions like this where we can understand the incredible depth of wisdom and knowledge that really can make these transformative shifts, where funders can start to build more trust around practitioners. So I'm so grateful that all of you are here. I will do my part to share this information widely, and BCYF, of course, we support you, we celebrate you, and we're happy to be able to partner with you on this event. So thank you so much, Captain Andrew. And Dr. Lee, good to see you too.
Thank you, Ms. President. I really appreciate that. And it's an honor to see you again. I missed you. I think I missed you the last,
I was here last Wednesday, but I wasn't here on the Fridays.
Oh, yeah. Listen, you don't have to come every single time. Trust me.
But I enjoy coming. I always leave edified. Yes, last time we had one of our board members, right? Lisa was here. I was here. I came up and said hi to everybody. But yes, this is wonderful. Make sure, folks, if you haven't attended any sessions in the past, there are still many sessions to come. Captain Andrew and Dr. Lee for, of course, curating an entire series. And each event has been so rich. Hearing from all these different perspectives from Baltimoreans all across the city, different panels, all this brilliance. Sister Asia, oh my goodness, you are so brilliant. All these brilliant people coming together each and every time. So thank you to Captain Andrew and Dr. Lee for curating these spaces and making them just full of just Black excellence. It's really empowering to just be in the space with all of you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. All right. So we're going to get right into it, Brother Mark. So Mark, now, just recently they did an interview with Dr. I think you pronounce his name Scalia for shock trauma. And we talked about this briefly a couple of days ago, but he basically said that his staff was burnt out, and he's the top surgeon for for University of Maryland shock trauma. And I just want to go right into one of the questions that we talked about, Mark, is how can clinicians be better linked with a positive system of support for Baltimore's children, youth, and families? And then also, Mark, a lot of time the violence starts inside the home. I'm hoping that you can connect them too.
Okay. All right. So I'll start with the first question you asked me about the doctor, the head of shock trauma, and I didn't say it specifically when I did my bio, but that was where I did my EAP work. Was at the University of Maryland, so I'm very familiar with their system. I'm very familiar with them being burnt out. Sister Asia touched on something that is directly related to what it is you're talking about. And we must being guided the same way today, because it's not that, as Sister Asia said, that this group, the middle income or middle class, are on their way. They are already there. I was working there during the earlier part of the pandemic, or at least 1 year into the pandemic. And I am telling you they are already completely burnt out. Completely. One little unknown thing about the hospital structure, as an example, just using him as an example because you brought him up. We think doctors, we think nurses, and that is true. But the bulk of the staff in a hospital setting are actually your technicians, your janitorial staff, and your security. They make up the bulk of the staff. And that group of people that make up the bulk of the staff are actually people who make minimum wage or just a little above minimum wage, as Sister Asia referred to. Yes, the doctors are definitely burnt out, without a doubt, and they're burnt out for two reasons, and they're suffering from compassion fatigue and even remorse. I remember having a nurse come to me in tears. And you know why she was in tears? She was in tears because she was making more money than she's ever made her entire life as a nurse. But the guilt and the shame that came with making the money, because why? She got extra pay for COVID. So on the one hand, she's making more money that she can't spend either. You know why? Because she was working so many hours per week that even though she was making this additional money, it came with all these other things. So she's burnt out. She's in need of self-care. And she's feeling shameful and guilty about making more money than she's ever made in her life. So there needs to be a complete realignment within the medical field regarding both their hours, their shifts, and oddly, they have this kind of rites of passage, kind of hazing thing that they seem to do to one another, even doctors, so that a doctor will say to another doctor, well, you have to work 80 hours a week. Why am I working 80 hours a week? Well, because I worked 80 hours a week. Well, if I worked 80 hours a week, you're going to have to work 80. So they have an entirely different issue and problem going on over there that's a little different than it is for many others in different fields. But what's not different is the fact that they're burnt out and they're in need of a lot of individual work in order to help them through this process where they buried more people. More people have died in a 1-month span in most of their careers than they've lost over their entire career.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, Mark, so as professionals and you all are the experts in this lane, do that same concept, do that impact y'all?
Oh,
And how you treat
absolutely.
patients and stuff, how you treat patients on the streets in the community?
Absolutely, because you cannot be effective at this work without feeling what your client, what that person that's talking to you is giving you. You cannot be good at what you do and not take on a little bit of this. So sometimes, and you all can bear me witness, I'm gonna be totally transparent. Sometimes, depending on the gravity and the weight of what you're dealing with, when you as the clinician get home, all you can do sometimes is just sit there in a vegetative state because you are done. You're done. So, right, I saw somebody say transference or in this case, sometimes if you don't treat it properly, then you end up with counter transference and you're giving it back to the people that you're supposed to be serving. So I know it's an entirely different track that Dr. Daniels and others are very well versed at and can speak to in terms of the clinician aspect of this, but have to be able to put into place as a lifestyle self-care because people are using this self-care word as some kind of catchphrase that meant that I got my nails done, I got a haircut, or I went to play basketball. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a lifestyle that has to be in place in order to make sure that you don't burn out and that you don't become ineffective.
Man, thank you. And I really was trying to show, because I remember you telling me how you was like helping and giving the doctors and nurses therapy that's inside of shock trauma. And you know, I have the ability, I can go on shock trauma floors. I have an ID to go on that floor, you know, every day, 24 hours a day. I can walk on the 5th and 6th floor where they working and dealing with the bodies, you know, life and death, you know, and I seen it, and it's not a pretty sight. And I just couldn't handle that. I couldn't do that all day. I couldn't do that. You know, I couldn't do that. I know everybody's built for different situations, but I just know the mindset, the mentality for the doctors and the nurses to deal with that, you know. And then, like we talked about the, you know, getting treatment, like they need help too. They need help as well.
And many of them develop very poor ways of coping. They're still coping, but they're very poor ways of coping. So there's a pretty high rate of alcoholism, and there's a pretty high rate of drug use and stealing pills and all kind of other things that go on that people would never imagine takes place, but it does as a way of them coping with those stressors, those everyday stressors.
They since I fell off the wire here for a minute, but
Yes,
I think Mark, you're so right, because for almost a year, that burnout, that compassion fatigue, that vicarious trauma, I experienced it for myself, and it's like it's when the helper needs help. But
yes, sir.
you know, and I think every last one of us have felt that, and it is you sit and you continue to take on other people, and if you don't know how to step back from some of it, if you don't know how to be able to, they used to tell us when the job ends at 5, you need to end, and not, but far too often, as leaders, as spiritual leaders, we walk right out of the door with it because we feel like we're obligated to do that. And because we do that, the kind of help that we could really give people is diminished, because we don't, this is a book that we have the young people reading at Morgan, Bandwidth Recovery. You can't reach your highest level of potential because you are functioning with underminers, things in your life that keeps undermining your climb. And we're seeing it everywhere. We're helping students now to reclaim their cognitive, their thinking, their emotions. Literally, we have to stop class. I have to stop class sometimes and check in. Because one of the students said to me recently, Dr. Daniels, you're saying some nice, sharp stuff, but I can't hear you. And the worst thing for somebody that thinks they suave and really think you're one of the best teachers on the planet, for a student to say, I've been sitting here for an hour and 50 minutes and never heard you because I'm dealing with something in my own life. And literally we had to stop and say, and how many of us with congregation, mosque, and synagogues, we're talking to people, but they can't hear us.
That's deep.
So
Yes,
I'm going to piggyback on that and say, as employers, what do you do? When I hear my staff get on the call, I'll be, oh, wait a minute. Nope, I'll talk to you Monday. Go and take your mental health day. Because there's nothing that I could give you right now that would be important enough for you getting yourself together. Also, when you deal with people, there is no such thing as a 9-to-5 schedule. People don't work on a 9-to-5. Sometimes stuff happens when you get home at 8 p.m. after you done had your day and your kids asleep. And so for organizations, we have to get out of these traditional hours of doing things because we see that crime happens all the time. But your rec is not open. You don't want to call Baltimore Crisis Center because it's going to take them 2 hours to send out because the person that they got works part-time at another clinic that's dealing with another crisis that's coming out of inpatient psychiatric. Like, we're all trying to balance where we can. But this is why I was very clear about pushing this back on the community, because we have done our due diligence as organizations. It is now time for the community to take a corrective action and say, you know what, that ain't working for us no more and we don't want it. Or that thing is working great. Let me now connect you with the other people who could do that. When we had our meeting earlier this week and Mark had mentioned about a mom who had gone through the program, my request was to say, would mom be willing to talk to another mom and child who's had the same experiences, where we're doing a shared experience to be able to assist with coping? Because the part is, everybody feels like they're on an island, but once we all open our mouths, we've all been exposed to the same things. So now we're looking at primary, secondary, tertiary trauma. Primary is it happened directly to me. I was a recipient of it. Secondary is I saw it happen and it was right in my home, right in my community, right in my space. And the one that nobody pays attention to is tertiary or tritary, however you say it, is the fact that we sit and absorb stimuli every single day from the news, from media, from the newspaper, from CNN, from Fox, from our alerts that talks about stuff around the world. Like, we are literally sitting having this Zoom while people are having a war in another country. And like, the main thing is I have empathy for them, but I'm dealing with a war right outside my door. And I'm not knocking your cause, but can we get some relief over here? And then when you see me, Mark, and I'm down, Mark, come and tell me, take a seat and say, sis, I got you. The same way we had that phone call that night at 10, 11 o'clock about a mom who needed some support so she could plan appropriately for the next morning at 9 a.m. This work does not stop. So if your family doesn't understand it, if your organization does not understand that, you are in the wrong line of work. Because when you tell me I can call you at that time, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pick up my phone at that time. And you better answer or send me a text message that says, hey, I'll hit you right back in 1 second. Hey, what's going on? Give me a minute to step out of the room, because people are in need. And the first time you miss that phone call, you lucky if they call a second, but you best believe by a third, they are out, because now you are everybody else in their life that did the same thing. They mama, they daddy, they grandmama, they church, they community members, their boss, their sisters, their cousins. Everybody has let us down. If by show of hands, how many of y'all on here have all been let down by somebody in some shape, form, or capacity? Guess what? It's times I let people down and didn't even know I did it because I didn't know how to properly communicate. And I went back and I made my amends because I contributed to that. When you mess up, apologize for your mistake and don't wait and let it be the bigger person and mow over for 3 and 4 or 5 days. Learn to catch yourself instantly. Oh, I said that. I didn't mean to give you that. That wasn't even your energy, sis. Give me a minute. Let me step out the room and readjust and come back. Because I know where I'm at, but I have to be mindful about where I am. And so this is all about cognitive intention. This is about your subconscious, the part that tells your brain to breathe, eat, blink, push all of your organ functions around, becoming conscious and intentional. It's never my intent to hurt anybody, which means I have to be mindful about what I say out my mouth. I have to be mindful about what I do. I have to be clear that I can't overexert myself and build out my flexibility and elasticity in places. And being clear that no is the healthiest word that we were never taught. And no does not mean that you are not worthy, that you are less than, or you are not able to have. What it means is that it's not within my capacity. And I'm sorry, but maybe let me see if I can find somebody else who can. That's it. Just a little bit of help goes a long way.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Phil, I got your text. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah. So, and again, it's been said, but I just want to emphasize it because a lot of times we're talking as if it's the clinicians and that's the only part of the organization. Their secretaries, their support staff, there are people that drive the people, sometimes family, friends, security folks. They're hearing these things. If you're, that people bring in the food because they're from the same neighborhoods and everything. And sometimes we just miss the fact that they are also getting impacted. So it's, again, when you're putting in services, you need to make sure it's everybody who you're bringing in contact with these folks is getting the support and the time to decompress and that mindfulness day off if they need it, because they're here, they're hearing if they're in the waiting room they're hearing these people talking about all these bad things before they go in to see the clinician and other things. And so again, it's like it's positive, but everybody needs to be included, not just the quote clinicians.
Yes, sir. Yep. Thank you. Yep. All right. Where's Corey at? Pastor Corey, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, Corey. So many youth, and we got about 15 minutes.
Yes,
so
sir.
Please let the guests or the audience please put questions in the Q&A, and we're gonna get to your questions. We want to make sure, don't hesitate. You can start typing right now. But we got Corey, Mark, and a Bishop was the last three questions. Then we're going to open the floor for everybody. Also, Corey, Pastor Corey, many youth are experiencing violence, do not feel as though their communities provide for their needs. Many are hurt, depressed, and see little positive in their future. And they basically, Pastor, they getting their guidance and their therapy from self-medication,
yeah,
or from their peers, and they not doing well in school.
Yeah.
And we deal with this. Everybody on this line, I believe, deal with youth in some capacity, you know. And I like what Bishop said about the students at Morgan, because a lot of times we forget about the college students. So how do we address that, and what's some steps that we could take, or some points that we can serve that generation right there, or that population?
Yeah. And it goes back to something you said, Cap, and I think we use this word a lot, but they're turning to other sources because they don't trust the people that's right there in front of them. And we think trust, we tell the community or tell people to trust us because of our title, because of our name, because of where we come from. That's not where trust comes from. Trust comes from two things. It has to be a collision. Integrity has to collide with capacity. It has to collide. That's where trust starts. When integrity collides with capacity, then we have to be a people, when we're dealing with our young people, is that we have to be able to deliver, over deliver, and under commit. You know what I mean? We cannot be over committing and under delivering, you know, because the key, that's the key to trust. That's the key, you know, because number one, if anybody you trust right now, if you don't know them from Jack, that's the two things you're looking at. You're looking at their capacity and you're looking at their integrity. Will they do what they say they're going to do? 90% of the time, the people in their lives did not do what they going to say what they did. So we got to have the collision. When we us go into the community, there is that collision. There is what we say we're going to do, we got to do it. There are kids that we brought Timberland boots, Nike boots, because they made a list and we said we were going to get it. I looked at that bill, was like, Lord have mercy, Cap. But we said we're going to do it. That's because integrity and capacity is where trust comes from. That's why we can go in the community and get the information that the police can't get because of trust. And that's why it becomes important. I pray everybody get that formula. If you start a business, they don't give a hoot about your degree. That's only going to take you so far. They're going to look at two things there. I promise you, they're looking at integrity and they're looking at capacity. And if they collide, they're going to say, you know what, but let me push it a step further. And this is where it is. Let's put the science to it. When a baby connects to their parents, there's this thing called oxytocin, right? That's what the trust thing is. In order for that to occur, when we get close to someone, we draw to someone, it starts right there with that idea of integrity and that collision to happen. And then we begin to, then this oxytocin come in and say, you know what, I want to get a little closer to you, Asia. I want to get closer to you, Brother Mark. I want to get a little closer because you that collision happened. And that's where you're going to get the young people. You wondering why you can't get young people? They don't trust you. You gotta have the collision. So that's the main thing, Cap. I can go on and on with this, man.
Yeah. Hey, that's why this got to be studied, because
Yeah.
you want to something real strong. I'm not even going to do no talking. You on it. You right there. That's a lecture right there, and I forgot what the professor called it in college.
And let me say one more thing, Cap, about
Yes,
We Are West. You know, you got 1,000 men walking around the street, hundreds of men walking around the street to do a work. Why do you think Black men that trust each other? Because we had the collision, integrity,
Right.
and this capacity met each other. We know when we hit the street what Captain Andrews say is going to happen. It's what he's going to do. You know, and what he says out of his mouth is true. So that's why men are able to follow Captain Andrew on the street, because this capacity aspect and integrity, that nobody's going to follow you without that collision. And that's what we got to learn. And especially the young people, you got to deliver.
Beautiful. Yes, sir. Mark gotta speak, Asia. Go ahead, Mark. He texted me and he put it in the chat to me. Go ahead, Mark.
I definitely wanted to add to this. Corey hit it on the nose, man. It's about trust. But, you know, and I spoke about this earlier in the week, our communities aren't healing, right? You know, they are not healing. They are not getting what they need to heal, right? You shouldn't have, and I was transparent earlier in the week, you shouldn't have a community that has been exposed to violence and visibly have seen it, right? And we as a city hasn't gone to them, right? Wherever that incident took place, where they are still going back to that area, you know, back to that community, and still, you know, being exposed to actually visualizing what happened, right? There's no reason why we aren't flooding those young people with as much grief counseling, victim services, mentoring, mental health as possible, right? It's our responsibility as authentic agencies, as we claim we are. There's no reason why that shouldn't be happening. And that's where it starts, community healing, right? It starts there.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. And Asia, I don't want to tell you not to speak, but go ahead and take a couple. You okay? Because
I put it in the chat. I think we always talk about the healing, but we have to teach healthy confrontation. You're not gonna get along with people. You just have to know how to agree to disagree. That's a whole nother session.
Yes, man. Bishop, I'm coming your way. It was a question in the
They didn't already started. Ain't nothing I can say. They didn't preach, and I'm getting ready to get them send them cash apps, and
come on,
because I was here. I'm supposed to be here to help other people. They helping me and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes,
so
sir.
no.
Oh, so I'm coming your way. This is the last question, and then we're gonna wrap it up with the guest. I know it was one question I seen, but Bishop, you spoke about. I think I want to say it was Asia spoke about the environment, and one of the things we didn't mention, we spoke about it last week about the young brothers that's locked up, that's in juvenile justice, and I personally did that work for 9 straight years, and it was 120 beds down there, and 118 of the young men was Black. You may have one Asian, one Hispanic, every now and then one white. So for 9 years, I did that with a team of 6 men. And when you talk about mental health, you talk about healing. These young men, the majority of them that was kept down there and went to either adult prison because they had major felonies, or they went to a camp to do 6 to 18 months based on a smaller felony or misdemeanor, or they violated probation. But these young guys, 16, 17, 18, some 15, they have murder charges, they have attempt murder, they have handgun violations, they had carjacking, home invasions, and the list goes on. And these guys have committed crimes. And I would meet with these guys every week. I would have a case or a CO or maybe the superintendent would call me and say, Cap, I need you to come and talk to this young man. He's losing it, you know, and they couldn't control him. So that's that's mental health, that's trauma, that's hell. And these guys are coming back on the street. Now, I believe some of them may be watching now, but if not, that's fine. We have scheduled them to come. But anyway, society got to deal with these young guys. They coming back into they coming back into the city every day. A lot of them recommitting crimes, and then they going home. And so how do we address that, Bishop? And what's some steps and points that we can do? Because I mean, we dealing with this every day. And what's the approach with that kind of mentality, that mindset, and these young men? Like, for instance, resources, what programs, or what would you recommend when you're dealing with that kind of person that committed a murder or attempt murder, shot somebody and beat the charge?
But again, when you also talk about young men that come home, I talk about it all the time, and it's exhausting to continue to talk to the kind of systems. Number one, you're talking about a whole group of young men. When you watch over the last 20, 30, 40 years, you're talking about, again, I believe in personal responsibility, but you can't create an environment that's sick and then expect people not to get sick. We talked about that during, we watched it during COVID. None of us deserve to be sick, but we also created an environment for people to get sick. Watch what I'm getting ready to say. Even when you have, no pun intended, even when you had zero tolerance policies in Baltimore, where you just took any and everybody. And when I say systems, I'm talking about families, communities as well. But when you have a system that's structured, you just take them all off the street and lock them up you're talking about since in the 90s, all the way through the beginning of year 2000, and you begin to lock them up. And we're not talking about the young people now. We're talking about their fathers. We literally locked them up, left the children to moms, to other systems and structures, and then we start to wonder why there continues to be a trend towards some kind of mental illness or some kind of breakdown, because three things all of us need to reach self-actualization. Asia talked about it. To reach self-actualization, you need a clear identity, purpose, and also destiny. Identity said, this is who I am. You can't kill like some of these young people are killing and be clear that that's and not understand what your identity is. Again, when you start talking about purpose, this is what I do equals what I'm supposed to have, which is destiny. Again, being able to build that internal framework, but then undergird it with an environment becomes very critical. We're talking about housing in Baltimore City. You're talking about an issue that's over 50 and 60 years old, the deterioration of housing on purpose and intentional, and then wonder why that there is this broken window theory among our young people and why they grow up in some of the conditions that they grow up. Listen, I'm not just saying it's outside of us, it is inside of us. So you're talking about a young man coming home. Just recently, did we fix the system of expungement? And being able to, if you finish the crime, being able to take them in a direction where they can get a college education, they can be able to live well, put them in a space where they can be able to earn. Do you understand that we're still trying to fix that system for them? And then we are expecting them not to recidivate and to go backwards. You've built the system so that it does cause recidivism. So again, And our job, and I listen, you know, the system is what we are part of, but we're up against some of those kind of challenges. I'm talking about the family. You can't destroy it and then expect for it to be the kind of system that is supposed to nurture children. Mental health starts from the not the child, but from the environment. And then it crosses into, we have anxiety, developmental disabilities, ADHD. The environment, the genetics create that. But then it goes on to psychotic disorders, eating disorders, substance abuse. There is an outgrowth that's a continuation if you don't fix the environment. And I'm calling, like Asia did, I'm calling communities to task. You can no longer, there's a scripture that says, you can no longer sit in your sealed houses. Sit in your sealed houses while you tend to your family. This is going to be, the police won't be able to fix that. It's going to require a community that know who they are to come get these kids and say, you're, like we're doing with We Our Us, you are mine. Regardless of what faith you have, Brother Captain, you are my brother. I'll hurt somebody that talks about you. It's just not going to happen. We have made a bond that we care about these kids, regardless of who they are. We go to them. We don't wait till they come to our office. I'm calling every bishop, every pastor. I am saying you can no longer sit up in your pulpits. That's why he shut them all down for 2 years. You can no longer sit there and sit in people's communities and not serve them. You can't drive your cars from the inner city to, I have a BMW, but I'm got that BMW in the city. Even the homeboys don't bother the BMW because I live right there with them.
Right.
All I'm saying is you can no longer sit in your sealed houses. I'm not trying to preach, but Corey, all of y'all that already started it, it is your fault. I'm blaming you for my behavior.
Man. Hey, Bishop, hey, bro, that was heavy, bro. And I know where you was going at with that. That was heavy. We've been getting a lot of good feedback from Yoshi and Asia and Renette, man, and then even the BCYF is giving it up. I just want to let everybody to know that we have another session on Friday, the technical assistance session, which starts at 10 o'clock. And please register for that. And it's more of a discussion, even though some of the panelists will be there, but we asking everybody, we want everybody to participate. And then on this one, we'll be able to see y'all as well. But I want to open this up because we do have
a good Friday service, Cat.
Yeah, hey, yes, sir. Hey, I'm gonna be honest with you. I ain't faking this. I love what I've been hearing. I love it. But this question can be for anybody that can answer this question. It says, well, and I'll get to Miss Audrey's question as well. Where can we connect with African-American male therapists? Can anybody answer that and help that question, that person, please?
Well, I think Keys, I think, I'm
sorry, Miss Harrison. I'm sorry, not that person. Miss Harrison asked that question. Sorry about that.
I think also Keys and some of the other, there are a lot of Black therapists that are out there that are really doing some real existential, well, and not just existential. When I say existential, I'm just talking about getting people to the deeper layers of why they exist, to get them to tap into who and what and why they are, because that is the beginning basis of really awakening. Amos Wilson, the great Dr. Amos Wilson will always say, awakening the genius in all of us. You hear me say that all the time. There is a latency of genius that are in our children, and our job, all of our job, is to awaken them. But I think that there are several. You can check with Keys. You can also check with the Black Mental Health Alliance. They are continuing to promote African centered therapists. I know my dear sister Shauna Mary Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, they're doing some phenomenal work as well.
Absolutely. Oh, no doubt about that one.
You know, Cap, I want to add to that. You know, like I
Yes,
know
sir.
there's a, you know, people are always looking for Black male therapists, but I'm gonna tell you something. I think just the authenticity of, you know, a therapist to actually come in. I've seen Asia shut a room down, right, with about maybe 20 young men, right, and have the same impact that a male therapist could come in and do. So again, it comes to a point where you have, okay, you got to take the variance of, okay, I have this Black male that's going to come before these 20 young men and actually, you know, kind of speak and be able to connect. But then you have Asia coming, right, and being able to connect and be able to push progress, right, for them to be able to internalize what it is that they should be internalizing, you know, in a therapy session, and then move forward with it. So again, I think just, you know, therapists, period, that, you know, are trauma informed, who, you know, actually have some resiliency practice, you know, that's what we need.
Excellent. Man,
We
thank you.
also have paraprofessionals because again, this goes back to the initial of we're short and we are burnt out and we are tired. And so I respect everyone's preference. This has always been a female dominated field in terms of social work. But the other part is Keys uses people who've gone through our program as peer supports, especially on the addiction side. So when I have youth who are 13 and 14 coming in for addiction services, they're not always meeting with an adult. They're meeting with a peer, someone who's within 5 to 6, 8 years of them, who's doing the same types of things, living in the same types of experiences. So we also have to start pushing that the people who matriculate through our programs also become representatives and get hired through our programs, because now they have firsthand experiences of what this looks like and they're able to connect a lot better. And so as long as there's clinical oversight, there's someone that you know that there's a clinical reach and that there is someone supervising, that's always a safe space too. But we also have to remember, we all can't meet the needs of 25 people, but we can meet the needs of 25 groups that have 10 people in it. So we have to start working on exponential factors versus individual ones, because now when I can't be there, I do have a buffer. You can't get Asia, you know to call Mark. Can't get Mark, you know to call Kat. Can't get Kat, you know to call Dr. Lee. Like, this is how this goes, but we have to also align and show who's in our safe space. So hard handoffs. Kat just isn't going to send me a referral. He's going to call and say, hey, can I put you on with this youth and can you talk to them? So now they're clear that we're in this connection together. So for those orgs out there, we're bigger than referrals. Sometimes we have to do a collective to be able to do a branch out and do a thorough assessment. But if they're coming in and they're asking, well, if you're making the request, please consider doing something that you've never done before. We always look for a gift, but we're always looking for how it's packaged, not what's inside the gift. Everything don't come in a box. Everything doesn't have a bow. Sometimes it's going to come to you distraught, gold hair, pink cat, so on and so forth. And it doesn't change the outcome, but it means that you have to change your view. And I always say, if you were blind, would you know? Not at all.
Excellent. Man, thank you. Go ahead.
The other thing is, Brother Andrew, someone could also even go on to even like the bigger sites like Psychology Today, and you can filter out Black male therapists and put in a zip code. And for anybody that's on Psychology Today, it'll narrow out. So even that's a resource. And because a lot of us are meeting virtually, you really can pick a therapist anywhere in Maryland that's licensed, and you know they could be 3 hours from you, but as long as they're in Maryland, they're able to see you.
Man, awesome. Thank you. I want to get these 2 points out the way because I think one of them was answered, but I also know that if you all may be able to help Miss Audrey, who I know does great work with young men and women over here at Oliver Community Center, and I know the administrative answered one question, one aspect, but it said the question she asked is, how can I get some? Oh, so that's specifically for them. So they answered it. So thank you for that. I want to open that up. They answered that question. The other question was, I guess it was a thank you question. Let's see. Here go right here. Oh yeah, say from Ms. Thompson. Hello, thank each and every presenter. You all have covered all aspects that are encroaching our youth and young adults' growth and development. I would like to suggest, if I may, that the conversation is extended to bring wholeness to our men and women and creating healthy relationships. There is too much discord amongst both sexes. Man, I agree 100%. And I will say this will be extended Friday at 10 a.m. Ms. Thompson, and please feel free to jump on. Can we put that up, Shaq, so they can see the actual flyer? Is that possible for Friday? And thank you for that response, Ms. Thompson. And I want to thank the audience for hanging around and listening to our experts, our panelists. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. I'm looking forward to the video. I'm gonna make a study out this for my team because this was heavy for me. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm warm inside, Ms. President. Ms. Alicia, are you on? I thought I just seen you. There you go right there. Yup, it's
I'm
up.
here. I'm here.
Yep.
I hanging on every word. Incredible jewels, incredible amount of knowledge. I mean, this is the kind of conversation that creates transformation in our field. This is it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And then also, is there a survey for this? Is there, Shaq, is there a survey for this one? We can have them to do the survey. Or is it for the
You know, I am not exactly sure.
I believe the survey, you'll get it automatically emailed to you first thing in the morning.
Okay, great.
If
Great,
you
great.
register, if you were registered.
And I think it's one for Friday, right, Dr. Phil? We normally do one right there on the scene for Friday, right? Or no, I see it right there. Okay, great. He's copying it right now. Great. Okay, good stuff. All right, so any while we getting this done, any last remarks from anybody? Time is really up, but I want to, while he's doing that, I want to give anybody any last remarks.
I think just also inviting folks that if you think there's people that would be benefit from coming Friday, even if they'll be able to see the videos of this, later. But we definitely want to have, if this is a topic that you think people would be useful to either listen to or participate in, and particularly Fridays for participation, please invite them to Friday. They don't have to have been here today to really both benefit, but also to help us think of the solutions and things. This is really meant to be an interaction. So please ask people that that you think this would be a good conversation to continue with them on Friday to continue.
Excellent. And Mendela just put the survey in the chat room. Okay, I'm sorry. Is I'm right about that? Great.
Yep, she asked Shaq to drop the survey. There it is. Perfect.
Great. So if everybody can go online, go in the chat room and fill that out, we appreciate it. And thank you for everything. Thank y'all for your patience. Thank the awesome panelists. Man, if I could take y'all, like I told Miss Alicia, I told the panelists last week, if I could take them inside of juvenile justice right now, really in all the prisons, especially the juveniles, they would clean up a lot of them young men's minds and hearts and souls, because it's I know they need it every day. They need it 7 days a week. Some of them young guys inside of them in them facilities. And so it's an honor to have great leaders like this on. And I'll be very transparent. It's good to have Black leaders that can deliver a clear message and bring awareness, not only to the ones that need the service, but the ones who need the information and the training, so we can, give it back out, like myself. So I want to thank you all once again. So yeah, appreciate everybody. Thank y'all. Thank y'all, and y'all have a nice night. Enjoy yourselves. Thank everybody. See y'all Friday.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.
All right.
All right.